What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking the latest episode of WWE Timeline, entitled Too Damn Selfish, which you could probably tell from the title of the episode that it has to do with the rivalry between Bret Hart and Owen Hart from 93 through 94. So I talked about in the premiere of my Timeline reviews about a week ago, when the first episode went up 2 weeks ago, I think, on the Miz and Daniel Bryan feud. What I really liked about that episode was that it shines some light on a feud that doesn't get a lot of love, in my opinion, more often than not from most fans. It's a recent rivalry. It spanned on and off for like 8 years. The thing with the Bret and Owen feud, it was amazing, and I really liked that they did an episode on this feud, because first of all, it's another feud that doesn't get a lot of love. Because you could very easily do an episode on Shawn and Bret. It's like, dude, that's been done to fucking death. It's like doing an episode on The Rock and Stone Cold, which might still happen. But there was just, A, so much to get into, and B, we've heard all about it before. It's like, man, I guess they can kind of do one on The Rock and Triple H, and that'd be different, just because that's not as, like, well-known as Steve Austin and Mr. McMahon, or Steve Austin and Rock, or Shawn and Bret. Like, I feel like we've seen so much content in those feuds. I have no desire to see those. I would still watch them, of course. I'm sure they'd be great. I would rather see feuds on this show that don't get a lot of love, like Bryan and Miz, like Owen and Bret. So this episode was around the same length as the Bryan-Miz one, but despite the fact it didn't last as long, they just went more in depth with the matches, the moments, the promos, the build-up, which is cool too. So a very, very good episode here. To kick it off, they talk about Bret Hart's popularity surging as a single star in the early 90s, where he became a two-time Intercontinental Champion. He then went on to win the WWE Championship from Ric Flair in late 1992. I don't think they show him losing it at WrestleMania 9, probably just because it wasn't one of his proudest moments, to Yokozuna and then dropping it right after that to fucking Hulk Hogan, one of the, in my opinion, worst WrestleMania endings of all time. But they also show an Owen Hart. They show Owen Hart finding success alongside Jim Neidhart in the tag team ranks around 93, late 92. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline, no pun intended, on that was, but I'm sure it was around that same time period. So they then show Bret and Owen joining forces for the first time in a WWE ring at Survivor Series 1993. It was really cool to see them go in as depth with this as they did. So it was Bret, Owen, Bruce, and then one other brother against Shawn Michaels and the Knights, or whatever the fuck it was. It was a really stupid concept. But I don't really remember the match being all that great, to be honest with you. But what I remember it being, I wasn't watching at that point, but what I remember that match for was kicking off the feud, planting the seeds, and, forming that little garden there for the Bret and Owen feud. Because Owen gets eliminated, I think. Shawn ended up walking out. It was a 3-on-1 advantage. But they planted the seeds that Owen was being overshadowed by Bret, and he wasn't happy about that. They showed him calling into a show with Gorilla Monsoon where they referred to him as being Bret's brother, and he's like, I would prefer that you didn't. So the makings of a feud were already there, even well before he turned on Bret at the Royal Rumble. But what made that official betrayal so much better was that it was telegraphed. There was a reason for it. It wasn't a complete swerve. Not everything has to be a swerve. From a storyline standpoint, it made complete sense that he would feel the way that he did. So, after Bret became the 1993 Superstar of the Year, Owen's kind of jealous. Owen says, I want to challenge you, Bret Hart. I want to find out who the real best wrestler between us is. And Bret says, no, listen, I will challenge anyone, I will face anyone, I will step in the ring with anyone who wants to face me. But at the end of the day, I'm not facing my own brother. Under no circumstances will that ever happen. And of course he was wrong, but he very strongly denied that challenge from Owen Hart, saying, listen, I will never face you. And they said right before the Rumble, listen, me and Owen, we had a sit down, we're okay, we talked it out, we're fine, we're all set. And there's no real reason to worry here that there's tension brewing between us. At this point, we're focused on becoming the next tag team champions of the world against the Quebecers at the 94 Royal Rumble pay-per-view. I forgot to mention this earlier, but the series is narrated by Mauro Ranallo, and he does such a great job of breaking down the highlights and the nuances of the feud and the promos and the matches. I love Mauro as the narrator for this show. Anyway, so they show Bret and Owen challenging the Quebecers for the tag team titles of the 94 Rumble. They fall short. And the commentators, I forgot who it was. Maybe it was Jesse, or I forgot who the heel commentator was. Maybe Jerry, I don't remember. But one of them, the heel commentator, tells this story that Bret was way too selfish. He didn't tag in. He should have. He was doing the work himself. When in reality, Bret, I guess, didn't really see it as being necessary to tag in to Owen Hart or to tag out, whatever. He was doing a lot of the work himself. Owen interpreted that as Bret just being selfish. That Bret should have tagged out. He cost him the tag team titles because his knee was hurting. And I think he got hurt in like an injury angle they did the night before. I believe so, if I'm not mistaken. I was going to say that was when he got beat by the Mountie the night before for the Intercontinental Championship, but that's actually not what happened. That was, I think, the 92 pay-per-view. But either way, Bret Hart was selling this knee injury. And when he had the sharpshooter locked in, he played up the injury. And the referee, with barely checking on Bret, it was very quick how they did this. He checked on Bret, was like, no, Bret can't continue, and then that was it. So the Quebecers won by referee stoppage, still the tag team champions. Owen is livid, thinking to himself and outright saying, listen, Bret should have tagged out. Why wouldn't he tag me in? The guy is too damn selfish. That's where the title of the episode comes from. And then as Bret Hart's being taken out of the ring, and I think Owen, ended up clipping him in the knee or whatever when he stood up to officially cement the split between the two. And as Bret's being taken away, he's being carried out of the arena, we see Owen Hart on the big screen being interviewed backstage by Tom Pettengill. And this is where the iconic line comes in. He goes, that's why I kicked your leg out of your leg. Because he should have said knee, but he said, I'll kick your leg. That's why I kicked your leg out of your leg. It was pretty funny. And I'm surprised they kept that in there. It was such an iconic botch, but they kept it in there. So that same night, Bret Hart reemerges. How the fuck he got cleared to be in the Rumble from a storyline standpoint, I have no idea. The referee prevented him from continuing that match when it seemed like he was okay. And they were like, no, throw the match out. They can't continue. We can't continue, blah, blah, blah. Yet they allow him medically to compete in the Royal Rumble like an hour later. That made no sense. But Bret enters. He wins the Rumble alongside Lex Luger. The old draw finish. Both Bret and Lex Luger win the 1994 Royal Rumble match. They have a coin toss on Raw soon after to determine who's going to face Yokozuna first. At the pay-per-view, it's Lex Luger. You would think you would want to lose. Because if you get Yokozuna first, then it's like you're getting a fresh Yokozuna. I mean, isn't that, you know what I'm saying? Like, wouldn't it make more sense to be in the main event? Maybe that's what it was, but actually it wasn't, because Luger won the coin toss, and Luger wasn't in the main event. It was Bret with Yokozuna, so that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Either way, so Owen, in the meantime, gets his WrestleMania match. Bret ultimately agrees to face Owen at WrestleMania. And Owen goes, I kicked you in the leg, Bret, and it felt good. And he talked about how he wanted to relieve all of his frustration out on Bret. He wanted to take out all that pent-up frustration on his brother at WrestleMania. And Bret's like, listen, you want to fight Owen? I'll give you a fight. And he kind of reluctantly says it because at the end of the day, he doesn't, no matter what happens, regardless of what Owen did to him, he still doesn't want to face his brother at WrestleMania. And it's that reluctancy, in my opinion, and this might have been the story at the time, they don't really say that here, that cost Bret the victory. It wasn't a fluke. Bret called it a fluke. It wasn't a fucking fluke. It was a weird thing for a babyface to say, oh, it was a fluke win. No, the guy beat you pretty fair and square, dude. But I think the reason why Bret lost was because he was reluctant. He didn't take it as seriously as he should have. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's still one of the greatest WrestleMania openers of all time, in my opinion. So Owen went in there wanting to prove that he was the better wrestler. And on that night, he was. He beat Bret, again, fair and square. In the opener at WrestleMania, like I just said, one of the greatest opening matches in Mania history. Later that night, Bret goes on to win the WWE Championship, beating Yokozuna in the main event. They have this grand celebration for Bret. Owen is out there shaking his head. And I just rewatched the whole pay-per-view a couple of months ago with Alexis, and it's a great pay-per-view. It's a great, it's not a great match, but the moment is awesome. And Owen's like, what the fuck? I just beat that guy, and now he's the WWE champion? I no matter what I do, this guy is always overshadowing me no matter what. So Bret Hart comes out the next night on Raw, or soon after on Raw, vowing to take on all challengers. Meantime, and he also said about Owen Hart, it was one match. He was better than me in one match. That doesn't mean he's better than me overall. It was one match that he beat me in. So Owen's like, all right, listen, you want to call it one match? I'll prove it to you that it wasn't. So he goes on to win the King of the Ring tournament, beats Razor Ramon in the finals with the help of Jim Neidhart to become the 1994 King of the Ring. They show his full post-match promo, awesome stuff. I really like how they include a lot of extended recaps from the WrestleMania match, the SummerSlam match, which I'm about to get to. I thought that was cool. So Owen says in the promo, I can beat Bret again. I beat him once before WrestleMania. I can beat him again. This time, it's going to be for the WWF Championship. So from there, they show the promos they cut on each other going into SummerSlam, the cage match being set for the pay-per-view for the biggest party of the summer, which they didn't call it that back then because it's a dumb nickname for SummerSlam, but that's what they call it now. They show all the promos and the build-up and the intensity. It was just great stuff. And Bret goes, listen, I'm going to beat you, brother, and I just hope after it's all said and done that you can live with it. And they show the highlights from the cage match, one of, if not the greatest cage match in WWE history. Bret barely wins. Owen's hanging on by a thread. Owen outlasts him by escaping the cage first, retains the WWF Championship. What I completely forgot about from that match was, first of all, I knew that it wasn't the main event. The Taker-Taker match was. The Undertaker, whatever the fuck you want to call it. That was the main event. That sucked. What I forgot about this match, not the fact that it happened in the middle of the card, which they didn't discuss here, it was the fact that Owen and Jim Neidhart actually attacked Bret afterward. So the feud continued, which I remembered, but I forgot about the post-match attack. So Jim Neidhart comes out right after Bret wins, attacks British Bulldog, who's in the crowd, along with his wife, who went tumbling over the friggin' guardrail. Jim Neidhart gets in the ring with Owen and Bret, locks the door behind him, so Jim and Owen take turns beating up Bret Hart, meaning the feud is not over. So they fast forward to Survivor Series, and this isn't really a great way for the feud to end, because I don't think Bret ever ended up giving Owen his comeuppance, which is the weird thing to me. They ended up teaming again years later in the Hart Foundation in 1997. They must have had another match at some point. I don't remember there being one, but like whether it be on TV or on a house show, I don't remember. But so they fast forward to Survivor Series. Bret is defending the WWF Championship against Bob Backlund, who's back in WWE for the first time in a long time, former WWE Champion in his own right. It's really a lot less about Backlund and more about the fact that Owen is in Backlund's corner. It's the first ever submission match for the WWF Championship. Not a great match. I think it's probably a better match than the WrestleMania one, but there's just so much interference and bullshit. I know that's the nature of the story they were telling, but it was just, I don't know, I wasn't a big fan of it. They should have had a lot better matches considering how good Backlund was. And maybe just the guy was not in his prime anymore. I don't know. But either way, Bret Hart has Backlund in the sharpshooter. Owen interferes when the referee's not looking due to Jim Neidhart, or not Neidhart, Bulldog, accidentally distracting the referee. So Owen gets in the ring, breaks up the sharpshooter. Backlund locks in the chicken wing on Bret Hart for a very long time. And while Bulldog is out, he's trying to wake up Bulldog so Bulldog will throw in the fucking towel. But it ended up working out a lot better for Owen because he went over to the family, Stu and his wife, and Bret's mom and dad. He goes over to his mom and dad, Owen that is, and Bret's mom and dad because they're brothers, of course. And he's like, listen, Bret's in a lot of pain. You guys got to throw in the towel. He manipulates them to throw in the towel. Bret Hart, as a result, loses the WWF Championship to Bob Backlund. Now, what they don't show you here is that Backlund lost the championship literally a day or two later to Diesel, a.k.a. Kevin Nash, on a house show in MSG, in like 8 seconds. So he was merely the definition of a transitional champion. But, again, it's a nice way for, I guess, Owen to get the last laugh in the feud. But you would think that it would build to one more match between Bret and Owen. Maybe it did on Raw. They just didn't cover that here. They just kind of quickly wrapped it up, and that was it. Mauro Ranallo gave the wrap-up, and that was all. But you would think, okay, Bret gets like another match. I don't know. I think at the Rumble he faced Diesel for the championship, didn't he? And he fell short, of course. He went on to face Backlund again at WrestleMania. Just a complete waste of Bret Hart. Like, at that point, the feud ain't with Backlund. Who gives a fuck about Backlund? It's all about Bret and Owen. And the fact they didn't really properly wrap up that feud is odd to me. It's kind of like it's kind of like the Miz and Bryan one, although Bryan did end up beating Miz in the end. So that happened. And they've had matches since then. I don't know if Bret and Owen did. Maybe someone can correct me, but I don't remember them having like a proper blow-off match. Definitely not on pay-per-view, I don't think, but like on Raw or something? Like, that's just bizarre to me, considering how much time they invested into the feud. But it was a great feud overall. They had amazing matches, some of the greatest of all time. Really put Owen Hart on the map. And I thought this episode was really, really good. There was a lot of negative stuff coming out of the whole Owen thing, of course, after his death, and they covered that in the Dark Side of the Ring episode back in late May. Really sad, depressing stuff. But it was cool to see the shine. I mean, obviously WWE ain't going to acknowledge that, but They don't talk a hell of a whole lot about Owen Hart. It's all about Bret Hart and Owen. I get it. They don't really give it a lot of love due to the whole Martha Hart situation, and I get that. They can't put him in the Hall of Fame. They shouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame due to the circumstances of how he died, but they can still honor his career on the WWE Network with stuff like this, and I thought this was a lot of fun. So check it out right now, this episode of WWE Timeline entitled Too Damn Selfish, focusing on the feud between Bret Hart and Owen Hart. The next one coming up I think it might already be up on the WWE Network, focuses on AJ Styles. It's called The Face That Runs the Place. If it's on AJ and John Cena going into SummerSlam and everything that's happened between them that spring in 2016, the winter of 2017, I am all fucking for that. That is one of my favorite feuds of all time. Like, as opposed to focusing on Punk and Cena, which is like one of those Austin Rock type things, like where we've heard so much about it, it wouldn't be anything new. They should do one of these on Orton and Christian from 2011, which was going on at the same time. Or like Edge and The Undertaker. We hear a lot about Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho. Amazing feud. But going on that same year was Edge and Taker. Like, that would be cool to see a feud on. Stuff like that, But either way, I thought this was a really, really good episode. Check it out right now. The next Timeline review should be up on Sunday. So I don't think there's going to be a SmackDown review this week. I'm probably going to put that up. There might be a SmackDown review. I'm not really sure. So what I plan on doing this weekend with TakeOver coming up tomorrow, SummerSlam coming up on Sunday. This is going up today. Saturday should be my R-Truth game show review from earlier on this week. And then Sunday should be the new Timeline review. And I know also this weekend we're getting a new Untold. We're getting a new 24 on Sunday. A lot of stuff to get to, a lot of content, all of which will be covered in due time. I just might be too busy with the SummerSlam-related stuff that I might not have time to do a SmackDown review. And if so, you can check out all that other content instead. So be sure to like this video, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to share the video as well. Daily content going up every single day, of course, with that being daily, obviously. Check out the description box down below for more WWE Timeline reviews. Have a whole playlist set up for it for this episode and the Miz and Bryan episode, and the AJ Styles one, when I review that in a couple of days. So check that out. Be sure to check out my all-new interview, which should be going up today, I think, if it hasn't gone up already, with Triple H, the Game himself, before TakeOver 30 on Saturday. I had the chance to chat with Triple H this past week. Just easily the biggest interview I've ever done. And it was a lot of fun, too. It was fucking cool. Check out the audio of that interview right now here on the channel, and my all-new Bleacher Report article interviewing Triple H up right now on Bleacher Report. Have a great one, guys. Enjoy SummerSlam weekend. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.